You watched The Killer recently, and you
Hmm.
really liked it.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it. What did you like about it?
Uh, I have a video coming out,
Yeah, I
and
know. It's a teaser.
uh, well, I don't think it's Fincher's best.
Hmm.
But I found it to be an interesting movie, especially an interesting movie on uh, just the sort of modern life and modern gig work culture,
Hmm.
where it's kind of like the modern life has sucked the soul out of everybody, and Fassbender's character, the unnamed killer, is a stand-in for I guess a lot of people in the workplace now. uh, you know, I've seen him described as like a McKinsey consultant turned hitman, and that's pretty apt. And
It's
it's
very easy to imagine.
yeah, exactly. It's not too far from reality, really, when you think about it. Yeah, if you have you met those guys? They're a little weird. But he Fincher really plays into this genre of film about like modern samurai, but he inverts a lot of it to make it even more soulless. But I like that, he's making it more like the genre of film includes, and I talk about this in the video, Melville's classic film *Le Samurai*, which starred Alain Delon in the late '60s, and Jim Jarmusch's film *Ghost Dog*, which starred Ghost Dog: The Way the Samurai, which starred Forrest Whitaker. And the hitman sort of falls into a similar, I mean, structurally, in a lot of different ways. It's very similar to these films, but like those movies, these characters live by the Bushido, this kind of chivalric ideal. And in The Killer, he lives by his own sort of, it kind of feels like a corporate memo, you know. And so like any kind of notion of ancient, I mean, I know that the Bushido is not exactly ancient, but pre-modern, pre-modern ideals, any kind of notion of honor, any kind of notion of just like being able to be the best man that you can be while being a warrior is completely gone in The Killer, and it's replaced by how can I be as efficient as possible, you know.
Hmm.
And his whole thing is like, they hire me because I don't give a fuck, you know. I don't care, like nothing in the world matters, nothing I do matters. I make money by doing this. This is my gig. How can I make it as efficient? How can I make it as efficient as possible? And and he works in this like hyper consumerist world, and and I, not to spoil it, but things go awry, and he thinks he's sort of like fighting the system to a point, but he's also completely enveloped by the system while fighting for it. Like, for example, using Amazon to get some of his assassin tools, you know,
Hmm.
using renting cars from Hertz, getting supplies at Ace Hardware, you know, uh, like using Postmates to sneak into an apartment, you know. And it kind of, there's this thread throughout the film on how like we live in this like global panopticon, and how everything is so interconnected, and that interconnectedness actually puts us more at risk of people like Fassbender's killer, where it's easier now more than ever to say find out where somebody lives, or
Right.
get into their, you know get into their house, uh because like the things like RFID, you know, locks and whatnot are so easily uh like easily worked around, that we have it's basically like the a lot of these security systems that people have now are just to tell themselves that um to tell themselves that they're safe when they're not. um
Hmm.
and so yeah, so there's a lot of commentary on sort of the modern state of people in that. But what I took away, what I liked the most about it is that it kind of works complementary to Fight Club, um, in that, like, whereas in Fight Club it kind of ends with this sort of like, oh yeah, we're blowing up the buildings, Project Mayhem is a go, and we're able to fight against the system. And the killer, it's the attitude is more like, the system is so big, it's so like, it's almost impenetrable. Like, he works for these like really top guys, right? The people who are calling the hits now are not like governments. It's not the mafia. It's hedge fund dudes. You know,
Hmm.
it's it's super rich guys who have more power than probably, the politicians they pay off. And he doesn't even know who they are. It's also just like this faceless, soulless system. Um, it's almost like Uber for him. Like, he gets a thing on his phone that tells him, "All right, this is your next target." He doesn't know who's paying for it. He doesn't know why he has to kill the person. It's just like, it's like on an Uber ride. Like, this person has requested a ride, and you're just
Right,
like,
right.
okay, click,
It's
yes,
it, it's extremely impersonal, and you're just sort
yeah,
of like in the flow of this mesh of like networks.
yeah, exactly. You're in the flow of this mesh of these networks, which has given the people in power way more power.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
that's really cool. I mean, I won't urge you to divulge too much while we wait for the when we wait for you know
yeah,
the video to
yeah.
come out.
I'm
But
I'm shooting the last bit of it today, but it's mostly edited. So
all
I'm
right.
hoping to have a cut for my patrons tonight, but I know that that's wishful thinking. Uh,
Hmm.
because I every time I edit, I'll look at my timeline. I'll be like, it looks fully edited. Looks fully edited to me. It looks fine. And then I start looking at it, I'm like, I want to change this. I want to change this. And then before I know it, 9 hours later,
Yeah.
you know, I've completely changed the whole video. That happens almost every time. So
Yeah. Well, one interesting thing to just note, because I was surprised, I shouldn't have been when you initially brought up Fight Club, because I was actually thinking about American Psycho. That's
mm,
what it sounded like initially.
yeah,
Um, you mentioned about how he's sort of like in this system in every possible way, right? And sort
yeah,
of sounds like a lot of it is about him going deeper into it or co-opting it for these purposes. Whereas in Fight Club, there's like a clear distinction. There's like a bifurcation of realms, right? So there's the main character, and then there's Tyler Durden, and
yeah,
the whole thing is like about separating those two lives, sort of completely, right? And you don't really, there's not a whole lot of stuff going on where he's at work or doing things related to his work. There's just sort of this other life that he has.
yeah,
Um, Whereas in this, it's like totalizing.
yeah, yeah. It's a bit, like, it takes, yeah, I would say that, American Psycho is also an influence, but the character of the killer has a lot more humanity than Bateman does, because part of the movie is him sort of, is like, he's a Raskolnikov type at the beginning, where he thinks he's like this Nietzschean Ubermensch, right, at the beginning of the film, and he thinks that's what allows him to do this. And sort of the his character arc is uh figuring out that he isn't. Um,
Hmm.
and his character arc is, so his character arc is finding this kind of happiness, and sort of at the end rejecting this nihilistic worldview that he has in service of this new economy. Um, that the nihilistic attitude helped him in this new economy, but it's kind of like a breakdown. The film is kind of following his like breakdown, that philosophical worldview kind of breaking down as he realized it goes against his own humanity. And it's about him trying to suppress his own humanity, and then he just can't after events that happen.
Hmm.
Um, and uh, and so, like, that's why I don't think I would put it with American Psycho, because Patrick Bateman just doesn't have humanity to begin with. You know, he is like this shell of a person
Right.
who's all superficial. It's all masks that he wears. Like, because he wears these different masks because to conceal the fact that there's really nothing behind the masks. Um, whereas the killer, he's more of a three dimensional person that reminds me of, like, what if Tyler Durden and the main character from Fight Club fused, but then were like ground into submission by the system. You know, so he has both in him, but it's all in service of the system now. It's all to get the IKEA furniture. You know,
Mhm.